Hi, my name is Samuel Fulda and I have just passed the SQE assessment on my first attempt and following that I've qualified as a solicitor. My background is I studied a law with politics degree in university, but at that point in time I wasn't sort of dead set on being a solicitor. I took time out after the degree and moved abroad, and then following returning from the gap year abroad, I then started paralegaling whilst doing the LPC, and then that followed into the SQE route of qualification. I wanted to take the SQE because I had done 2 years of good paralegal work experience, and once the SRA came out with the SQE scheme, it was clear that someone in my position who had got the experience and that would be, it would be recognised to help them qualify. So it just made it seem like the sensible route to take. I chose to do a preparation course because when you look at the SRA website for what the SQE exams are, it's so wide and it's got so much material you have to cover and go through. So it seemed obvious to me that I needed a course, which was too much for me on my own. QLTS were the most affordable, and they just seemed like the best course because they had a lot of experience from the OSCE, the old OSCE exam, which this SQE was based off. They did a lot of work on that, so they just had the most experience for in these exams. My experiences with QLTS were overwhelmingly positive. I felt that they provided a great range of different things. It was very easy to use on their website. You could find anything instantly. They had tons of lecture videos, tutorials, and then the most important thing were the mock exams, hundreds of mock exams for the different skills and the legal side, the skill side, different mock interviews, and it covered everything you needed and more. It was all really good, but I do think the mocks were the most beneficial because it was, especially like having done it, the first cohort to ever do the SQE, you weren't quite sure what you were getting, but the mocks were even harder than they were in real life, so it sort of covered you off and prepared you. The lectures were great as well, but I just think the mocks were just crucial and key. And mock interviews, it gave you scenarios you could act out with someone else, and they were very helpful. Allocating time obviously very important for studying these, especially if you're working. I tried studying 2 hours every evening, and on weekends pretty much as I could. If I had a spare 3 hours on a Sunday morning, I would work. It wasn't necessarily time, it was more just if I had free time. But that was, it was very important to set every evening. I would aim to do, watch a lecture, make notes on it, whatever it would be. But I would have a plan to do 2 hours of roughly in the evening, more if I could, and then a weekend work. But it was, as I say, it wasn't so much the hours, more it was based on their taskbar, the different things they offered. Try and do a mock, try and do a video lecture, and just to make sure I kept up doing something, because the course is really enormous. Yes, my firm, Evershire Sutherland, they were very supportive. They sort of were aware that in the evening I was studying, so I never was overloaded with work or had any late finishes really, because everyone was aware I have evening studies, the mocks, the tutorials, etc. So that was really, really good of them, and they were very supportive of it. I did feel prepared. I would say that's really only because of the mocks, because I know that other courses, and speaking to some peers, they hadn't maybe done as many mocks as me, more focused on the content. But because of all the mock practice I did, which literally, I was sick to death of them, I did that many, that I did feel, I can say I did feel well prepared on the whole. The SQE has helped me enormously because I've qualified far quicker than I would have otherwise. I've been able to utilise my work experience as a paralegal, which before, you couldn't really, or was more unusual anyway. Now it's become a mainstream way to qualify, and so it's helped me just get on the ladder, really. Looking back, preparation course is absolutely essential. I wouldn't recommend anyone doing it without that unless they happen to have unbelievable knowledge and have worked for about 30 years. No, but I think you have to have a preparation course, because anyone who looks on the SRA pages can see how wide the exam questions are, and you need help preparing. Simple as that. My advice would be, I would say start early as you can, because again the course is so wide and it really is so much material to cover, and the earlier you start the better it is. You know, you're not going to climb to the top of the mountain in one day, but slowly do some mocks, the lectures, get back into the material. Someone like me, you know, if you're like me with a paralegal and your degree was quite a few years ago, you're not going to remember that material, so you do need time to essentially restudy it. So I would say start early, you know, just set yourself small goals and just get stuck in. In my view, as a very junior solicitor, I think the three main things for a modern lawyer would be, I think, to be humble, willing to, you know, learn from anyone. I think the second one would be not having too many preconceptions about what you want to do, how you want to do it. I'd say be open-minded, go for anything that comes your way, and see where your career takes you. Because it's, you know, just already from my paralegaling and short time as a qualified solicitor, I can see, you know, things come up which you never would have expected. Just go for it. And I would say the third one is to try and, you know, have a sense, famous one, but commercial acumen, be commercially minded, just try and be sensitive to the cost element of what you're doing at all times, and, you know, the business side of the job, really.